In the frozen silence of the Appalachian Mountains, where snow falls so thick it swallows sound itself, an 8-year-old boy named Jace pressed his small hand against a frosted window. On the other side of the glass, separated by a single pane, sat something impossible, a wild bobcat with a pale cream-colored coat and eyes that seemed to hold an ancient understanding. But the bobcat wasn't alone. Curled at her feet, barely breathing in the sub-zero dawn, lay a tiny bundle of blood-stained fur, her kitten, dying. The wild mother looked directly at Jace through the glass and did something no wild predator should ever do. She stepped back, deliberately, as if to say, "She's yours now. Save her." Jace hadn't spoken a single word in 2 years, not since the day his father died. But in that moment, staring at a mother's desperate trust and a kitten's fading life, he opened his mouth and said the first word his mother, Sarah, had heard in 730 days: "Help." What happens when a silent child and a wild predator discover they speak the same wordless language? This is the story of an impossible gift and the healing it brings to everyone it touches. Before we go into details, click subscribe, like, and comment where you're watching from. I would be glad to know this story goes as far as Canada, all of the United States of America, Australia, Africa, and even the United Kingdom. So let me know where you're listening from. 2 years, 3 months, and 16 days. That's how long it had been since Jace Miller's voice disappeared into the mountain air, carried away on the same wind that had taken his father. He was only 6 years old when it happened, a routine patrol through the Appalachian wilderness, the kind his father, a wildlife ranger, had done hundreds of times. Jace had begged to come along, and his father had said yes. They'd walked familiar trails together, his father pointing out deer tracks and explaining how to read the forest's language. Then came the moment that would replay in his mind every single night: the loose rocks, the sickening sound of his father's fall, the impossible silence that followed. Jace had stood at the top of that ravine, mouth open but producing nothing. No scream, no call for help, just paralyzed terror as his father lay motionless 30 feet below. By the time another hiker found them hours later, it was too late. The doctors said nothing could have saved him, but Jace knew the truth that lived in his chest like a stone. He'd had a voice, and he hadn't used it. The November afternoon poured golden light through the kitchen window. Jace sat at the table working through long division, while Sarah hummed at the stove, stirring something that filled the cabin with the scent of rosemary and garlic. It was a moment like 1,000 others, peaceful, quiet, predictable. Then movement at the forest edge caught his eye. At first he thought it was a trick of the light, but then it moved again, and Jace's pencil stopped. A cat? No, too large, too wild. The creature stepped into the clearing with cautious grace. A bobcat, but unlike any he'd seen in his father's wildlife books. Her coat was pale, almost cream-colored where it should have been tawny brown, her spots faint whispers against winter-white fur. She was beautiful. She was also starving. Even from 50 feet away, Jace could see the sharp angles of her ribs, the desperate hunger in the way she scented the air. Sarah didn't notice, too focused on dinner. Jace watched the bobcat survey the clearing with amber eyes that seemed to calculate risk with every breath. After a long moment, she melted back into the shadows. That night, while Sarah read aloud, Jace's mind wandered to his father's old field guides. Later, when Sarah closed her bedroom door, he pulled down the worn books and began to read by flashlight. bobcats, lynx rufus. The pale coloration was rare, a genetic variation that made survival difficult. Light fur meant standing out to prey, made stalking nearly impossible. This cat was fighting nature itself just to eat. She was different, struggling, alone, an outsider trying to survive in a world that hadn't been designed for her. Jace understood that feeling perfectly. The decision formed without conscious thought. He slipped downstairs, wrapped leftover chicken in a napkin, and eased the back door open. The November cold bit at his skin as he placed the food on the flat rock near the clearing's edge. Then he retreated inside, turning off all the lights except the small lamp by the window. An hour passed, then another. Jace waited with the patience of someone who understood that good things rarely came to those who rushed. When she finally appeared, it was so sudden he almost missed it. One moment the clearing was empty, the next she was there, following the scent. She approached the rock cautiously, ears swiveling, muscles coiled. Then she saw the chicken and froze. Her head lifted. Her amber eyes found him through the window. They stared at each other across the glass and darkness, boy and bobcat, both still, both silent. There was no fear in her gaze, no aggression, just recognition, acknowledgement, understanding that transcended species. She ate quickly, never taking her eyes off him. When she finished, she sat back and looked at him for one more long moment before disappearing into the night. In her amber eyes, Jace saw something he'd never seen in any humans, perfect understanding of what it meant to survive by staying silent. The next evening he left food again, and the evening after that. A pattern emerged between them, wordless and pure. She would come at dusk, he would watch from the window. And in those stolen moments, Jace felt something he hadn't felt in 2 years, connection without expectation, understanding without the burden of speech. After the funeral, the words simply stopped coming. The doctors called it selective mutism, a trauma response. His brain had decided speech was too dangerous. Specialists came and went. Therapists tried everything: play therapy, art therapy, even a specially trained dog. Nothing worked. Jace's mother, Sarah, watched her son retreat further into silence with each failed attempt, her own grief manifesting as a desperate need to shield him from any further pain. So she'd done what she thought was right. She'd moved them to her late mother's cabin deep in the Blue Ridge Mountains. Here, she reasoned, there would be no one to hurt him, no classmates to stare, no teachers to pressure him to speak. Just the two of them, homeschooling, following careful routines, existing in the heavy quiet that had become their new normal. Sarah filled the silence with constant chatter, narrating breakfast preparations, reading aloud, humming while she worked. Jace communicated through notes on a whiteboard, through gestures, through his expressive eyes. Their relationship was deeply loving but fragile, built on an unspoken agreement that they'd both already lost too much to risk losing each other. "If I can't protect him from sadness," Sarah whispered during one late-night phone call, "what's the point of anything?" But protection felt a lot like a different kind of prison. As Jay sat at the kitchen table doing math problems in the golden afternoon light, watching the mountains turn purple in the distance, a thought moved through his mind like a ghost. Words didn't save Dad. Why would I trust them now? Some children go quiet because they have nothing to say. Jace went quiet because he'd said everything that mattered, and it hadn't been enough. The mountains held his silence without judgment, asking nothing of him except his presence. And for 2 years, that had been exactly what he needed, until the day a pale shadow appeared at the edge of the clearing and everything began to change. November bled into December, and the ritual became as natural as breathing. Every evening at 6 o'clock, Jace would flicker the porch light twice, his signal, then slip outside with whatever scraps he'd saved from dinner. Chicken skin, leftover beef, bits of fish. He'd place them on the flat rock near the tree line, then retreat to his window post. Sarah noticed the disappearing food but drew the wrong conclusion. "I'm so glad you're eating better," Sarah said one morning, relief softening her worried expression. Jace simply nodded, letting her believe what she needed to believe. Some secrets were kinder than truth. The bobcat learned quickly. By the second week, she was waiting at the forest edge when the light flickered, her pale form ghostly in the gathering dusk. By the fourth week, she'd closed the distance to 15 feet from the house. By week 8, she sometimes lingered on the deck itself after eating, grooming or simply resting, as if the space between them had become safe ground. The transformation was remarkable. Her ribs gradually disappeared beneath healthy muscle. Her coat grew thick and glossy, catching moonlight like frost on cream. She moved with more confidence, less desperation. Jace had done that. His small rebellion gave her a fighting chance against winter. He began talking to her in his mind during those quiet vigils. "I think you're lonely too," he'd think, watching her pale eyes reflect the cabin lights. "I think you understand what it's like when everyone expects you to be normal, but you just can't." She would tilt her head as if listening, and Jace almost believed she could hear his thoughts. The bobcat asked nothing of Jace except his presence. In return, she gave him the same. It was the most honest relationship he'd had in 2 years. Then came December 20th, and the first real snow. Jace awoke to a world transformed, everything muffled under 6 inches of white. That evening, he flickered the light and left food as always, his breath misting in the frigid air. She came, but when Jace studied the clearing the next morning, something made his heart skip. 2 sets of tracks in the fresh snow, one large and familiar, the paw prints he'd learned to recognize, the other impossibly small, following close behind, sometimes disappearing entirely where the kitten had struggled through deeper drifts. A kitten! She had a baby! Jace pressed his hand against the cold window glass, emotion welling up, joy and fear tangled together. The pale bobcat wasn't just surviving for herself anymore. She was a mother, responsible for keeping someone even more vulnerable alive through the hardest season, and winter was just beginning. That night, he doubled the portions. The mother ate half and carefully carried the rest away in her mouth, disappearing into darkness with her secrets safely hidden. Jace understood keeping secrets. He understood protecting the things you loved by hiding them from a world that might not understand. As December deepened and the mountains turned white, boy and bobcat continued their silent conversation. 2 outsiders who'd found each other across the divide, asking nothing but presence, giving nothing but understanding. It was enough. Until the night everything changed, it was more than enough. The warning came on December 23rd, crackling through the radio with the kind of urgency that made even the mountains hold their breath. Historic blizzard, life-threatening conditions, temperatures dropping to 10 below zero. Sarah's response was immediate and absolute. She moved through the cabin like a woman preparing for siege. Firewood stacked to the ceiling on the porch, pantry restocked with canned goods and batteries, generator tested 3 times, bathtub filled with water in case pipes froze, storm shutters pulled tight against windows that suddenly seemed too thin, too fragile against what was coming. "No going outside for any reason," she told Jace, her voice carrying the weight of non-negotiation. "This storm is dangerous. Promise me you'll stay inside." Jace nodded, but his stomach twisted. What about the bobcat? What about her baby? The tiny tracks he'd seen in the snow, so small they'd barely pressed through the surface. How could something that fragile survive what the radio was describing? He grabbed his whiteboard, wrote quickly, "Animals will be okay?" Sarah glanced at the message and smiled with the confidence of someone who'd never watched something die because help came too late. Animals know how to survive storms, honey. They find shelter, den up, wait it out. Don't worry. But Jace did worry. He'd seen how thin those kitten tracks were, how the little one struggled through even shallow snow. And the mother, she'd been healthier lately, yes, but still lean, still fighting. Now she'd have to fight for two. Christmas Eve arrived with the storm. It started as fat, lazy flakes around noon, pretty and harmless. By 3 o'clock, the wind had begun to howl. By 5, the temperature had plummeted, and snow was falling so thick the forest disappeared behind a wall of white. The power flickered once, twice, then died. The generator kicked in with a reassuring rumble, but the sound only emphasized how isolated they were. Sarah tried to make Christmas special. She decorated the small tree they'd cut together, made hot cocoa with extra marshmallows, wrapped presents in cheerful paper. Jace went through the motions, helping hang ornaments, forcing smiles he didn't feel. But his eyes kept drifting to the windows, searching for movement in the white chaos beyond the glass. By nightfall, visibility had dropped to 0. The world outside wasn't a landscape anymore. It was a void, a screaming emptiness that swallowed everything. Temperature dropped to 10 below, then lower. The wind didn't just howl, it shrieked, rattling shutters and finding every crack in the cabin's defenses. Jace lay in bed listening to the storm rage, unable to sleep. She's out there, he thought. Her baby's out there. Somewhere in that frozen darkness, huddled against wind that could kill in minutes, the pale Bobcat was trying to keep her kitten alive, and there was nothing he could do, nothing he was allowed to do. The helplessness felt familiar. It tasted like that day on the mountain trail, standing at the ravine's edge, while his father lay broken below. The same paralysis, the same crushing weight of being unable to help someone he cared about. The storm didn't just bring cold, it brought the ghost of every time Jace had been powerless to save someone he cared about. And as December 24th became Christmas morning in the howling dark, all he could do was pray that when the storm finally passed, the pale shadow and her baby would still be alive. Christmas morning arrived at exactly 5:47 a.m., announced not by bells or carols, but by a sound that didn't belong. Jace woke in darkness, the storm finally quiet, and lay perfectly still listening. There it was again, a rhythmic scratching at his bedroom window, deliberate, intentional. Tap, 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 pause, tap, tap, tap. At first, he thought it was a branch, wind-blown debris caught against the glass, but the pattern was too precise, too purposeful. Something was asking for his attention. He slipped from bed, bare feet silent on cold floorboards, and approached the window. His breath fogged the frost-covered glass. He wiped it clear with his palm, and his heart stopped. The mother Bobcat stood on the deck, her pale coat barely visible against the snow-covered wood. But it wasn't her presence that froze the air in Jace's lungs. At her feet lay a tiny bundle of cream-colored fur, motionless except for the faintest rise and fall of shallow breathing. Blood darkened the pristine snow around the kitten in splitting crimson. One small hind leg was bent at an angle that Jace's stomach twisted.
This was the kitten, the one who'd left those impossibly small tracks. Her baby. The mother Bobcat lifted her head and looked directly at Jace through the glass. Amber eyes met blue across the barrier, predator to child, mother to boy. For a long moment, neither moved. Then she did something that defied every instinct, every law of wild nature. She stepped backward, away from her kitten, deliberately leaving the tiny broken body closer to the door, to the human, to help. The message was unmistakable, written in a language older than words. I'm leaving her with you. You're in charge now. Save her, because I can't. She retreated to the deck's edge but didn't leave, her body tense, every muscle communicating the cost of this terrible trust, waiting for Jace's answer. His mind went blank with panic. She's dying. The kitten's dying. Mom will say no. She'll say it's too dangerous. But I have to try. I have to. Jace ran down the hallway, his feet pounding harder than they had in 2 years, straight to his mother's bedroom. He stood at her bedside, chest heaving, the weight of 730 silent days pressing against his throat like a stone. Sarah stirred, opened her eyes. "Jace? Honey, what's wrong? Bad dream?" He opened his mouth. His throat was tight, muscles unused to the work they'd abandoned so long ago. Fear screamed at him to stay quiet, stay safe, don't risk it. But outside, a mother waited. A baby was dying, and somewhere in his chest, beneath the trauma and silence, something broke open. Help. The word came out cracked and small, barely more than a breath, but it was a word. His first in 2 years. Sarah's eyes went wide. Tears spilled instantly down her cheeks. "Jace, did you just—" He forced the second word past the stone in his throat. "Please." Her hands flew to her mouth. Third word, barely a whisper, but clear enough. "She's dying." For 2 years, Jace had believed words were powerless, but watching that mother Bobcat trust him with her dying child, he realized sometimes the only thing powerful enough to save a life is the courage to ask. And sometimes, after 730 days of silence, 3 words were enough to change everything. Sarah followed Jace to his window and saw what had broken 2 years of silence. Her face went pale, torn between terror and hope. "That's a wild animal, Jace, a predator." But her voice cracked on the words because her son, her silent, wounded son, had just spoken. She grabbed her phone, hands shaking. Wildlife hotline, closed for Christmas. Emergency vet, roads impassable, 4 hours minimum. The storm had cut them off from everything. Sarah stared at the kitten through the glass, at the blood spreading on white snow, and her nursing training overrode her fear. "We stabilize her, then we decide." She turned to Jace, fierce. "You stay inside. I mean it." More words tumbled from Jace's mouth, rusty but determined. "She won't hurt you. She asked us." Sarah pulled on thick gloves, her heaviest coat, grabbed the pet carrier they kept for emergencies, and her medical kit. Jace pressed his hands to the window as his mother stepped onto the deck. The mother Bobcat tensed immediately, ears flattening, a low growl vibrating in her chest. Jace's instinct was instant. He spoke through the glass, voice still rough but steady. "It's okay. She's helping. I promise." The Bobcat's ears twitched toward the sound. She was listening. Sarah approached the kitten slowly, narrating every movement. "I'm just going to pick her up, just going to help her." Her hands were steady despite the predator 5 feet away, despite knowing that one wrong move could end in violence. The moment of truth came when Sarah's gloved hands touched the kitten's blood-matted fur. The mother lunged forward with a strangled yowl and stopped, inches from Sarah. Every muscle coiled, maternal instinct screaming at her to attack, to protect. But trust, impossible, desperate trust, won. She backed away, still growling, but she backed away. Sarah wrapped the tiny body in a towel and carried her inside. The mother paced the deck, yowling her anguish, but she didn't attack. She watched through the glass as her baby disappeared into human hands.
The kitchen became an emergency room. Sarah moved with practiced efficiency while Jace stood vigil beside her, words flowing now like a dam had broken. "You're okay. You're safe. Your mama was so brave. I'm Jace. I'm going to take care of you." Sarah assessed the damage with clinical focus even as tears streamed down her face, listening to her son's voice, that precious sound she'd thought lost forever.
fractured hind leg, deep shoulder wound, infected, severe hypothermia, dehydration. She made a splint from a ruler and medical tape, set up warming protocols with hot water bottles, improvised IV fluids from their camping supplies. 6 hours passed. Dawn light crept across the kitchen table where the tiny bobcat kitten lay wrapped in towels. Slowly, impossibly, color returned to her gums. Her breathing strengthened. Body temperature climbed toward normal. "Carrie," Sarah whispered, exhaustion making her voice thick, "for the Christmas miracle." As if responding to her name, the kitten's eyes fluttered open, pale gray-blue, unfocused but alive. Her gaze found Jace and held. He leaned close, tears on his cheeks, voice gentle. "Hi, I promised your mom I'd keep you safe." Through the window, the mother bobcat still watched, motionless now, waiting. Sarah had spent 2 years trying to find the right words to unlock her son's voice. A dying bobcat kitten had done it in 30 seconds. Sometimes miracles came wrapped in fur and desperation, delivered by a mother who understood that trust, even impossible trust, was the only language that mattered when your child needed saving. 2 days after Christmas, the roads finally cleared enough for travel. The mother bobcat hadn't left the porch, sleeping under the deck overhang, eating the food Sarah left out. She was waiting, keeping vigil, a mother who'd surrendered her child but refused to abandon her entirely. The drive to the Wildlife Rehabilitation Center took 4 hours through snow-packed roads. Jace held Carrie's carrier in his lap the entire way, talking to her constantly in that newly rediscovered voice. "You're doing so good. We're getting you help, real help." Sarah kept glancing in the rearview mirror, marveling at the steady stream of words from her son, each one a small miracle. Dr. Elena Martinez's examination brought relief and complication in equal measure. "She'll survive," the veterinarian said, and Jace exhaled for what felt like the first time in days. "The leg will heal with a permanent limp, but she'll adapt." Then came the harder truth. She's 6, maybe 7 months old, critical developmental stage. Prolonged human contact during trauma at this age can create irreversible habituation. She may lose her fear of humans entirely. "What does that mean for her future?" Sarah asked. "We'll minimize imprinting as much as possible, but you should prepare for the possibility she can't be released." 6 weeks passed in a blur of weekly visits, 8-hour round trips through winter roads. Each time they came, Carrie was stronger, more responsive, and more comfortable with humans. Despite careful protocols, feeding tools that hid human hands, minimal direct contact, she sought proximity to people, showed no startle reflex to human voice or movement. These are red flags. She's imprinted. Dr. Martinez met their eyes with compassion. "I'm sorry, but Carrie cannot safely be released into the wild." The options laid out before them felt impossible. Transfer to an out-of-state sanctuary where Jace would never see her again, euthanasia if her quality of life was deemed insufficient, immediately rejected, or certified home placement if they could become licensed rehabilitators. Jace's response was instant, his voice clear and certain. "The third one. We do the third one." Sarah hesitated, seeing the weight of it, the cost, the time, the complete life change. "Jace, this is—" "I promised her mom." His words came faster now, urgent. "Promised I'd keep her safe here. If we send her away, her mom won't know where she went." He took a breath, and more words poured out than he'd spoken in years. "Mom, please, I know it's hard. I know it's scary, but Carrie needs us. Her mom chose us. We can't break that promise. I already broke one promise when Dad died. Please don't make me break another." Sarah's breath caught. There it was, the wound that had stolen his voice, finally spoken aloud. This wasn't about a bobcat. This was about a boy who'd been powerless once and refused to be powerless again.
During their next visit, Sarah watched through observation glass as Jace pressed his hand to the enclosure fence. On the other side, Carrie pressed her paw to the same spot, mirror image of that Christmas morning window, both reaching across a barrier, connected by trust. Sometimes the biggest act of love isn't letting go, it's changing your entire life to hold on in the right way. "Okay," Sarah said quietly, "we'll do it, together." Sarah enrolled in the wildlife rehabilitation program the day after they made the decision. Online courses filled her evenings: bobcat behavior, nutrition protocols, enrichment strategies. Weekend intensives took her to facilities across the state. Jace helped with her homework, drawing detailed enclosure designs in the margins. "She needs high places," he'd say, sketching platforms, "and a sunny spot, places to hide, and her mom needs to be able to see her from the forest." Spring arrived like a promise. Construction began in late March, transforming a section of their property into 1,500 square feet of naturalized habitat. Multiple elevated platforms, real trees incorporated into the design, rock formations, a covered den area, small stream feature, climbing logs at varying heights. Members of the local conservation group showed up to help, ending the isolation Sarah had built around them. Jace met other kids for the first time in years. He was shy at first, but when someone asked about Carrie, his voice emerged, steady, passionate, alive. His love for wildlife became a bridge to connection. The months passed in purposeful work. March melted into April, April bloomed into May. At the rehabilitation center, Carrie grew stronger, her cream-colored coat gleaming, her limp barely noticeable. On their property, the mother bobcat's visits became less frequent, natural separation beginning, just as it would in the wild. Trail cameras captured her still patrolling territory, still checking the house. Jace left food out periodically, maintaining their silent conversation. Sarah transformed. The fearful woman who'd moved them to the mountains to hide became someone who joined the Wildlife Advisory Board, networked with rehabilitators, spoke at town hall meetings about human-wildlife coexistence. She was building community instead of walls. "Isolation didn't protect you, Jace," she told Jace one evening. "Connection did. I was wrong about so many things." Late May brought the final inspection. State wildlife officials walked the completed enclosure, tested every latch, verified every safety feature. The certification came through on a Tuesday. Miller Wildlife Sanctuary, official and legal. Jace painted a small wooden sign that evening: "Carrie's Forever Home, where wild hearts are protected." Sarah hung it on the enclosure gate, then framed two items side by side: his blank whiteboard from 2 years ago and his current journal, pages filled with words about Carrie, sketches of her face, observations about her recovery. "Before and after," Sarah said softly. "Both versions of you matter." They'd spent months building a sanctuary for Carrie, but really, Carrie had already built a sanctuary for them, a place where broken things could heal without losing what made them special. The enclosure waited now, complete and ready, the cameras positioned, the protocols established, everything prepared for the homecoming that would either complete the circle or break it entirely. Tomorrow, they would bring Carrie home. Tomorrow, they would discover if a mother's trust and a boy's promise could create something that shouldn't exist, a bridge between wild and safe, between freedom and protection, between the words he'd lost and the voice he'd found. Late May arrived with warmth and possibility. Transport Day felt like Christmas and graduation combined. Carrie returned at nearly 1 year old, no longer the tiny, broken kitten from that snowy morning. She'd grown into an adolescent bobcat, still pale-furred and gentle-eyed, her limp barely noticeable as she moved. The release into her new home was tentative at first. She sniffed every corner, tested each platform with careful paws, investigated the covered den. 20 minutes passed before she made her choice: the highest platform, bathed in afternoon sunlight. She settled there and looked directly at Jace through the fence, making a soft purr sound that bobcats use for greeting.
"Welcome home, Carrie," Jace whispered, "just like I promised." 3 days later, at dusk, golden light painted everything amber. Jace sat on the porch doing homework while Carrie dozed on her favorite platform. Movement at the tree line made him look up. The mother bobcat emerged from the forest for the first time in weeks. She was healthy, well-fed, her coat gleaming. She approached the enclosure slowly, deliberately, and stopped at the fence. Mother and daughter came face to face through the mesh, separated by 6 months and a barrier that meant both protection and loss. No sounds passed between them, just silent recognition. Both sat in mirror positions, amber eyes locked in communication beyond human understanding. An hour passed. Then the mother stood, turned her head toward Jace on the porch. Their eyes met briefly, wild to human, mother to guardian. "Thank you. You kept your promise." She retreated to the forest but didn't disappear, settling in a visible spot overlooking the enclosure, watching, accepting, approving. Summer established its pattern. The mother visited 2 or 3 times a week, sometimes approaching the fence, sometimes observing from distance. Carrie responded with calm recognition, no distress or longing. Natural separation occurring as it would in the wild, but connection maintained. Jace documented everything in his journal, pages now filled with sketches and observations. Sarah photographed the 3 of them, mother in wilderness, Carrie in sanctuary, Jace between both worlds, and understood they were witnessing something rare. 6 months later, December returned with gentle snow. Jace sat on the porch, now 9 years old, hot chocolate warming his hands, journal in lap. Both bobcats were visible, Carrie in her enclosure, the mother in the tree line, both at peace. Sarah joined him with a second mug. They sat together in comfortable silence, mother beside her son who once wouldn't speak. "You know," Sarah said, "most kids your age want a dog or a cat or a hamster." Jace smiled. "Carrie's better than any pet." "She's not a pet." "I know. That's why she's better. She's real. She's exactly who she's supposed to be, and she chose to trust us even though she didn't have to. Her mother chose us, actually." Jace considered this, watching snow fall on both bobcats. "Yeah, and we chose to keep the promise. That's what matters, right? Keeping promises even when they're hard." Sarah pulled him close, especially when they're hard. The gift hadn't been the kitten, though Jace treasured her. The gift was understanding that silence could be powerful, and so could speech. That broken things could heal without losing what made them special, and that sometimes the best way to honor the wild was to build them sanctuaries, not cages, but bridges between worlds where trust could exist without taming what made them extraordinary.
Thanks for watching. If you love stories that stay with you, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a new upload. What was your favorite moment from today's story? Tell me in the comments below.